Hello everybody, welcome to the newest video. Today I want to be talking about something a little bit more advanced and not related to Victor specifically. Today I want to talk about key cards that you should always be playing around in the Origins and Spiritforged meta, whenever you're planning a combat or even just planning a few steps ahead to close out the game. Why this is important is because you want to make sure that your plan is always sound. You never want to be caught off guard by how your opponent might react to some of your plays. And once you're able to think a few steps ahead, that's going to greatly increase your chances of being competitive and taking the win. So in today's video, some things that I want to talk about are going to be the hidden cards, removal spells, or just removal in general, buffs and debuffs, accelerating or readying units, and just other cards that are just always important to keep in mind whenever you're playing the game. Now, why are these cards important? Hidden cards are just important for obvious reasons. If there's a hidden card in play, you need to know what that card might be in order to make sure that you're able to make the optimal play to kind of play around it. Removal is going to affect whether or not you're able to keep your important units alive, and possibly whether or not you're going to be able to hold at a battlefield if you're going for that kind of play. Buffs and debuffs will also help inform you if you're able to hold or if you should back off and kind of let them do their thing, because you don't want your units to die for no reason. Similarly, even if your opponent has no units in their base, if they are able to play units that have accelerate or that are able to ready themselves or each other, they might be able to push in surprise units into the battlefields that you're trying to hold on to, which could be a problem. So they're important to keep in mind as well. And like I said, other cards, they are just important to keep in mind for different reasons that you'll see later on in the list. Now, on these slides is just going to be the most common cards that you'll probably see in the Spiritforged meta. I might not be including all of them. I might be including some that won't really be meta. But I also made a spreadsheet for you guys. It looks like this. It's quite well organized, or at least I try my best to. That's going to have a more comprehensive list of all the cards that are important. Now, there are a few things to note. Um, we are talking about these lists of specific cards. We will not be talking about cards that such as card draw or ramping cards, because while they are important to deck building and they're going to affect how likely it is that your opponent might have certain cards or when they're going to be able to play certain cards by, they're not quite important for the immediate future where you're thinking like one turn cycle ahead into how you might win the game next turn. So while these are important, they're not really going to be talked about in this video. If you look through this Google Sheets, which I will have linked, if you think there's some other important cards that are worth putting down but I forgot it, or if there's like a mistake with some of them, let me know and I'll try to fix it as soon as possible. And I have the cards organized by color, but don't forget that legend signature cards exist, but I haven't included them here since they don't slot into one specific color. And if you're playing against a certain person, they only have one legend signature card total, so it shouldn't be difficult to play around that as long as you remember that they exist. In this spreadsheet, I just want to go through it really quick. It's going to include the card name. This is going to include their energy or their power cost over here. So the left number is energy, and the right number, if there is one, is going to be the power. If it's a unit, I'll include the might in this column. This column will have a very basic summarized effect on what the card does. It's not going to be 100% accurate sometimes. I might leave out some minor details, but this is designed to give you like a refresher on what the card does, not actually tell you the full details of what the card does. If it's a spell or even some gear or units, uh, I also have their speed that you can play it at. If there's nothing, it's gonna be slow speed by default. But if they have action speed or reaction speed, it'll be noted here. And some other notable details about the card is written here, like hidden or like equipment or some things that discounted and accelerate, things like that. So take a look at here. And if there's anything that you think should be changed, please let me know in the comments. So why I do this is because in, I believe, November, I went to a 5K tournament, and this is my first physical TCG. So I really didn't know what to expect going in, but I was like, okay, like I want to do pretty well. But before this tournament, I would say I was like a mediocre player. But I kind of went through all the cards and I made this old spreadsheet that looks a lot uglier. about all the different colors and different cards that I should always be playing around. So you could see that it has all the hidden cards, a few just important cards to look out for, removal spells, things like that. And I think that taking these notes and seeing what every color is good at and what they're bad at has helped me navigate all these matchups that I went through at the 5K tournament. And at the end, I ended up like 5-3, which is like not fantastic, but it's not terrible. It's much better than how I thought I would do. And so I hope that this video will be helpful to you guys to kind of get your game to the next level. So without further ado, I'm going to be going through the colors in rainbow order, not like the actual Riftbound order. And yeah, we'll get started. So first is the Fury rune, the Fury domain. Fury is known to be a very aggressive color. They have tons of removal and tons of accelerate, which you've probably seen through Kaisa in the Origins set. So in Origins, Fury didn't actually have any hidden spells, but Spiritforged has gone ahead and given 2 hidden cards to Fury. One is Bushwhack, it's 2 energy, 1 power. Friendly units enter ready this turn, play a gold gear token exhausted. So this is kind of like a fake hidden card. Because you're typically not going to be playing this as a hidden card in the current meta. Like you could play to hidden to discounted, but you're probably not going to be playing and moving your own units on the opponent's turn. So the only benefit to hiding this would be for the discount of 2 energy. This card is very meta relevant though, because Miracle Draven runs it to accelerate or to ready, I suppose, their units that they can summon like they're like 20 might worth of units in a single turn. The other hidden card that Fury got this set is Sudden Storm. It is 3 energy, no power, and at action speed it deals 2 to a unit at a battlefield. But if it's attacking, you deal 4 to it instead. So this is definitely a card that you should watch out for. Whether or not it'll be like a heavily meta card is up for debate, but if you don't consider this card when you're pushing into a battlefield with a hidden card on it, it could really punish you if you're pushing in with like a 4 might unit. So keep an eye out for that. Removal spells. Most of these spells are from Origins, so I'm not going to really go through them in that much detail. I'm going to focus more on the Spiritforged side. Piercing Light here, it's 2 energy, 1 power, with repeat. Deal 2 to a unit at a battlefield and 2 to up to 1 other unit. It's kind of like a baby Falling Star, because it's 2 damage instead of 3. But it is also more restricted in its targeting, because it needs to be able to target a unit at a battlefield, although the other tick of 2 damage can target anywhere. So that does make it sound worse, but it is 1 power cheaper. And if you do need it, it has the flexibility of being a 4 energy, 2 power, and then like deal 2 to a united battlefield twice, and then deal 2 twice to up to 2 other units. So you get what I mean. Hextech Ray and Void Seeker are classic staples for Origins. Sky Splitter I put up here again, and I just want to remind you guys that this is one of the few cards that can be played for 0 energy. So even if your opponent is tapped out, if they control an 8 might unit, you should be careful about Sky Splitter potentially being played for free. And lastly, it's going to be the only, or not the only, but the most relevant gear removal that Fury has access to. It's Thermal Beam, 5 energy, 2 power. At action speed, it kills all gear. Now, there is another Fury spell that is new called Detonate, which is, I believe, 1 energy, 1 power. It kills a gear, but its owner draws 2. So that is a potential another spell that could pop up as the gear removal option for red, but who knows? We'll see. For buffing, once again, I kind of liked how Origins had a focused design philosophy for like what Fury did. And the only source of buffing for red, not like actual buffs, which is increasing might, for Fury was Cleave, and it gives Assault. So when it was your turn and you're playing against a red player, I could be confident that they won't be able to buff their units. But in Spearforge, they got a few different options that could allow them to buff their own units, even when they're not attacking. But first is Blood Rush. It's kind of like a reskinned Cleave. It's 1 energy with repeat. At action speed, you could give a unit Assault 2. So it is worse rate than Cleave, because for the same price, you're only getting 2 assault instead of 3. But it has the added flexibility of giving 4 assault for 2 energy. I I don't think there's a big difference for which one you run, but I think cleave would just be better. But it's going to depend on what people run for decks. Against the Odds is a 2 energy reaction spell that gives a friendly unit at a battlefield plus 2 might this turn for each enemy unit there. So if you're trying to push in with a lot of units into a battlefield, this could punish you quite heavily, because even if you push in with like 3 small units, they're going to be able to get plus 6 off of this spell. So this is going to be a huge spell that you have to really be playing around. Even if you're pushing with 1 unit, it's going to be getting plus 2 might this turn. So that's like a discipline, like without the draw. So that's already pretty good for red already, as like a more defensive holding card that would enable holding. Another similar spell, although in a different skin, is Longsword. It is 2 energy, 1 power. It is a quick draw gear, which means you can play it and equip it at reaction speed, and it just gives plus 2. The benefit to this longsword over other similar like buffing spells is that even if that unit that you equip the longsword onto dies, your longsword is still going to be sitting at your battlefield, at your base, I mean, and you get to re-equip it and attach it to other units. So it's going to be like a buff that stays, like a 2 might buff that stays on the board until it might get destroyed by anti-gear spells or abilities. The last card I want to talk about for this section is Ankle Shot. It's for 2 energy and 9 reaction speed. You can choose a unit and an equipment with the same controller, and you get to attach the equipment to that unit or detach that equipment from that unit, and you draw 1. So this kind of helps you move weapons or equipment from like a 1 unit to another, or you could allow you to attach it for no power cost, and it also replaces itself, which is pretty good. So if you have like, let's say, a BF sword, or even let's just say a long sword that's in your base, and you have like a powder portal that's defending a battlefield, your opponent could push in with like a 3 might unit, but you could angle shot to equip the longsword onto the powder portal, which pushes it to 4 might, winning that combat if nothing else happens. So be careful about that. Now, for accelerate and ready units, in the last set, we saw plenty of Kaisas and Dariuses running around, so they were the main threats we were looking at. In this new set, there's a few more interesting additions. First is going to be Rengar. It's 3 energy, 1 power for 3 might, but it could be played at reaction speed and gives assault 2, and can be played to a battlefield that you're attacking. So Rengar is essentially offensive Shen. Shen has the same cost and might, except it has shield 2 instead of assault 2. But Rengar can be played to a battlefield that you're attacking. So it's able to play during more it's able to be played in more situations. This is definitely something that's gonna throw off a lot of players until they get used to him, because there weren't really many ways that you could play a card at a battlefield that you don't control yet, that you're contesting. So be careful that your opponent might just bring a random extra unit to that battlefield. Rek'Sai is 3 energy, no power for 3 might. She has accelerate, so she could pay 1 might and 1 power to just have her enter ready. She has assault, but she's able to give certain other units accelerate. So because she says that friendly units played from anywhere other than a player's hand have accelerate. So this is only really useful in a Rek'Sai deck where you can play units from the top of your deck, which counts as not from your hand. And so those units will come in with accelerate, meaning that you can pay 1 energy, 1 power to have them come in ready. Armed Assailant is another higher end red card. It's for 6 energy, 1 power, and 6 might. He also has accelerate, but he has weaponmster, so he could instantly equip another weapon, and with his extra might, he could push into a battlefield immediately, which might be a big threat. The last card I want to talk about here is Dunebreaker. It is 7 energy, 1 power for 7 might, and it comes in ready if you have 2 or fewer cards in hand, so Jinx support. And it also has the added benefit of when it holds, you draw two. So if Jinx is ever going to be meta, this will definitely be probably a pretty good card for them to include. Um, as long as it's not like a miracle list. As long as it's like an actual Jinx style list. Other cards to look out for that don't really fit into the other categories I mentioned. Minotaur Reckoner is like Valmos on a stick. It's 5 energy for 5 might. He just says that units can't move to base. So if he is anywhere, units cannot be moved to base. So this shuts out a lot of game plans that purple has, which could be very relevant, especially since purple is running the current Spiritforged meta. Battering Ram is a staple card for Miracle Draven, which is why I included it here. For 5 energy, 5 might, it's nothing that special. But its effect is that it costs 1 less for each card you've played this turn to a minimum of 1. And Miracle Draven less have no trouble playing 4 cards per turn, so this might be hitting the board as a 1 energy, 5 might unit, which is very threatening. Brynir Thundersong is a card that we've seen and we've known about in Origins. It's 6 energy, 5 might. When you play me, opponents can't play cards this turn. So there are a few implications about this card. It's really good at shutting down like Draven decks or just purple decks in general that have a lot of interaction. Or just even like green decks that try to buff their own units and get them a little bit bigger for combat or stun. So Brynir Thundersong could be seeing a lot of play in Spiritforged, and I'm sure she's going to be very good into future sets as well. Ferris Forerunner is 6 energy, 1 power for 6 might, and she has Death Knell, play 2 3 might max unit tokens to your base. And so essentially for 6 might, for 6 energy and 1 power, you're summoning 12, you could get 12 might worth of units, but she does have the problem with being really bad into purple, which is a big problem because purple is the best color in Spiritforged. So whether or not, so she like people have put it as a sideboard card for now, but it might be seeing experimental play. Lastly, I just wanted to bring Sky Splitter back here as a reminder that this is a card that could be played for 0 energy if there is an 8 might unit or above. I just like to put extra emphasis on these cards that can be played for 0 energy because it's something that if your opponent is tapped out, like yes, they probably can't be playing any spells, but this is one of the spells or interaction that they could play. Next is Body, and the whole philosophy about Body is that they play big dudes and they do things with those big dudes. So they like to use that large might numbers to fight in combat, and they also have a lot of ways to ready units so that they could use those big dudes as soon as possible. So in Origins, we had Paka Cub, which was a hidden card that you might see once in a while. But they got a new hidden card, which might be crazy, but I don't think it's really been seeing that much play yet. But it might see a lot more play in the future. It's here to help, 2 energy, 1 power, and by default, it's action speed. You may play a unit from hand to a battlefield you control, reducing its cost by 3 energy. And so this does have potential for a lot of combos, but I just don't think there are quite a lot of orange decks that are looking to be playing these combos as of yet. One thing that people have been talking about is using Here to Help to play Bring Here Thundersong, essentially preventing your opponent from playing any like cards on their turn. But whether that's good enough to run that combo is a different question. It'll see play in the future sets. Whether or not it's good enough in Spiritforge, we'll see. For removal options in Body, it's mostly going to be Challenge and its family. Challenge for 2 energy, 1 power just tells you to choose a friendly unit and an enemy unit. They're going to deal damage equal to their mites to each other at action speed. Now in Origins, we already had Challenge on a stick, which is Carnivorous Snapvine. It's just Challenge in a unit form. It has 6 mana, and then it just casts Challenge with itself in another unit. In Spiritforge, we got Challenge's picky twin cousins, because Marching Orders is 3 energy, no power, has repeat, but you're essentially casting Challenge, but you can only target enemy units at a battlefield. So pros and cons. And finally, we have Challenge's older brother, which is Gentleman's Duel. For 6 energy and 1 power, you can give a friendly unit +3 might this turn, and then cast Challenge. So these are all, different cards doing the same thing. where you're using your own, hopefully large mites to kind of kill your opponent's units. The more unique removal that body has is Strike Down. For 3 energy, 1 power, you get to choose an equipped friendly unit, and it deals damage equal to its might to an enemy unit, but then you have to detach the equipment from it. So this is interesting. A lot of orange decks that are going to be using a lot of equipment could probably find good value with this card. Lastly, for gear removal, we have Akshan. By default, he's just a 4 energy, 4 might weapon master unit. But if you pay 2 extra power, you get to essentially steal an enemy gear from your opponent. And if it's an equipment, he attaches it. If it's not an equipment, then it's just going to go to your board. So very powerful effect where you're able to kind of not only destroy your opponent's gear, but you get to steal it. The downside is that if Akshan leaves the board for any reason, then that equipment is going to return to its owner. For different ways to buff in orange, these are kind of a few of the most relevant ones. Pit Rookie is a classic for any deck that's playing with buffs. It's just a great way to produce a buff for cheap. Kinko Monk has a similar effect, but it's a little bit more expensive, has a power cost, so it's not as good. The premium card that Body got in this Spiritforged set is going to be Punch First. For 1 energy, 2 power, you get to give a unit plus 5 might this turn on action speed. So it's an insane might swing for only 1 energy. Like, yes, it's 2 power, but this is an incredibly strong card that you always have to be on the lookout for whenever you're playing against Body. Back to Origins, we have Primal Strength, which is a similar effect as Punch First, but it costs 4 energy and 1 power, and it gives a unit plus 7 might this turn. Body also got a lot of pretty interesting equipment. Warmock's armor is 1 energy. It just gives a plus 1 might, but when the unit that is attached to conquers, you get to buff that unit. Doran's Blade is just kind of a vanilla 2 energy plus 2 might equipment. Nothing too special about it, but it's on rate and it's pretty good to enable other like weapon synergy. Bone Shiver is 3 energy, and it has the more expensive equip cost of 1 energy and 1 power. But when the unit it's attached to conquers, they get to channel a Rune Exhausted, while also giving plus 2 might. And lastly is Trinity Force. For 4 energy, you get plus 2 might, but when that unit holds, you score an extra point. So this is very relevant in Mastery and some other decks that are more focused on holding. For Accelerate and Ready units, or just ways for Body to be doing that, we have Confront and First Mate from Origins. They're still gonna have their own places in the meta. Lucian is a premium, like, smaller unit that Body got this set. For 3 energy, 3 might, he has Weapon Master. But what really makes him special is that the first time he conquers, each turn he readies. So you could push him to a battlefield, he'll conquer, hopefully. And then because he conquered, he readies, and so he could immediately come back to base where he's safer from enemy removal. Next is Jawfish. For 7 energy, 2 power, it is a 6 might unit with Accelerate. Now that might seem bad, but if you, for each of your mighty units, his cost is discounted by 2 energy. So if you just have 2 mighty units, he could be played as a 4 energy, 3 power, 6 might ready the unit. And lastly, we have good old Deadplume Predator. We know what he does from Origins. He's able to be played directly to an occupied enemy battlefield. So it's like a similar to like an accelerated effect where he's contesting battlefields on the turn he's played. Other cards to look out for. Body has quite a few of them. Sabotage is going to rip cards out of your hand and also just give hand information. So it's very valuable. Unyielding Spirit is going to counter all spell and ability damage for that turn. These two cards are just cards we've seen in Origins. Punch First I include again just because of how important it is to be playing around this card. This is probably going to be one of the most influential cards in Body. We have Ruin Runner, which is a 6 energy 5 might unit that can't be chosen by enemy spells or abilities. So it might be really difficult for some decks to really kill this Ruin Runner. because the only way to do so is most likely going to be through combat or just through some spells or abilities that don't target. And lastly, we have Dazzling Aurora. Once again, we know what this card does as well. It probably won't be as prevalent in the Origins meta, in the Spiritforged meta as it was in Origins because of all the gear removal that's floating out there. But who knows, you might see it once in a while. Next will be the Order color. Now, Order is primarily known for lots of killing because they have all the kill spells, but they also have some buff synergies and also a lot of token synergies that we'll be talking about. For hidden cards, we have Hidden Blade and Facebreaker, which are Origin staples, but we got a new hidden card called Gart, which is for 3 energy. You get to play a 2 Might Sand Soldier unit token, and you get to pay a power to ready it. Now, if you don't know, a Sand Soldier unit token is a 2 Might token that has a Weapon Master. So even though this might look like a 3 energy play a 2 Might unit there, if you have any other equipment on that you're controlling, this Sand Soldier could equip that equipment immediately. So if you, let's say, have a BF sword, this will be a 5 Might Sand Soldier instead of just a 2 Might Sand Soldier, which will be pretty good for 3 energy, although you're going to need those pieces to make that good. The being able to ready it also makes it more flexible to be played as like a regular card, not as a hidden card. So if you ever need to conquer a specific battlefield that turn, it's going to enable you to do that as well. For removal options, we have plenty of options. We have the standard Call of the Week Vengeance, which can target anywhere. Which I say flex like loosely because Call of the Week doesn't like your opponent's targeting, but if they only have 1 unit, then it can target base. Hidden Blade is one of the premier options for killing units out of battlefield for cheap, although your opponent gets the upside of drawing 2. Imperial Decree, just whenever any unit takes damage this turn, kill it. It could be combined with Bellows Breath, which we'll talk about later on, for even more like huge power. And the one of the best gear removal spell is Salvage, which is 2 energy, 1 power. You get to kill a gear and draw a card, so it replaces itself. The 2 new removal cards that Yellow got access to is they both target battlefields. The first one is Blood Money, where for 2 energy, you get to kill a unit at a battlefield with 2 might or less. If it was an enemy unit, you get 1 gold gear token. If it was a friendly unit, you get to play 2 gold gear tokens. So this could see play in like Victor, where sometimes you could kill your own units to just get 2 gold gear tokens if you need to for some reason. But I don't think it's that great because there's not, while there are certain key units with 2 might or less, their decks probably have ways to A, get it off a battlefield, or B, just buff it up to be greater than 2 might. So I think it's difficult to reliably find value with Blood Money. The other spell that we got is Drag Under for 5 energy, 1 power. At action speed, you can kill a unit at a battlefield, and it costs 2 less if you play it from anywhere other than your hand. So once again, that's just Rek'Sai synergy. But even without that added benefit, this is still just a hands down, straight up, better Blast of Power. I believe that's what it's called. It's a Proving Grounds card, which is for 6 energy, 1 power, kill unit at a battlefield. So just strictly better than that. For cards that buff units, we have a few interesting additions this set. We have Rally the Troops, which for 2 energy allows you to play a friendly unit, or it just buffs every friendly unit you play that turn, and you get to draw 1, so replace yourself, which is pretty good. This could be good in some token decks. Cause even if you play like let's say 3 units on a turn, which is pretty easy with recruits, it's essentially a 2 energy draw a card and you get 3 extra might. So that's not terrible. So it has potential, but we're gonna need to know exactly what kind of decks are looking for this kind of card. The next card is Death Grip. For 2 energy, you get to kill a friendly unit to give its might equal to another friendly unit this turn, and once you get to draw 1, so this replaces itself as well, and this is at reaction speed. This allows you to quite significantly buff certain cards. It's especially powerful with equipment, since your equipment is going to add to the might of the unit you're killing. And so it could allow you to really pump up some of your units that are potentially defending or attacking to be bigger than they normally would be. Call to Glory, we know from Origins, if you have a buff, then you could spend it to play this for free to give a unit plus 3 might this turn. So this is another card that you could play for 0 energy, so always watch out for that. Under Titan is a 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might unit. When you play it, you get to give your other units plus 2 might this turn. And if it's revealed from your deck, you get to add 2 energy. Now, this last part is, I believe, just like Rek'Sai synergy. There might be a few other ways to reveal cards from your deck, but Rek'Sai is going to be the main one. But it's kind of like a mini grand stratagem on a unit. So I do think this is pretty good, but once again, it's going to need like a specific deck to function under. The last card is BF Sword, which is probably like the most relevant weapon that Yellow got access to. It's just a vanilla 4 energy plus 3 might, but the plus 3 might being able to be attached to units over and over again is pretty relevant. It's a good amount of might. For accelerating and readying, I thought this was pretty interesting because in Origins, Order really didn't have any ways to do this. It didn't have ways to play a unit and have it contest battlefields on the same turn. But in Spiritforged, we got a wide variety of different options. First is 2 different cards that allow units to ready themselves. Xinjiao is 3 energy, 1 power for 4 might, so it's above rate. It also gets tank, and enters ready if you have 2 or more units in your base. So great for decks that play a lot of smaller units and have them in base. Fantastic card. Guards you mentioned earlier in the hidden section, it could be played as hidden, but it could also be played as a regular card, and you get to pay an extra power to ready the Sand Soldier. Azir is interesting because he does have Accelerate. He's a 4 energy, 4 might unit with Accelerate, so he could accelerate himself. But when he attacks, you get to move any number of your token units to that battlefield. So you could use all your tokens to conquer conquer one battlefield, and then you get to play Azir, accelerate him, push into the other battlefield, and bring in all of your remaining tokens to that battlefield. So this will be a very powerful finisher in a lot of token decks. Whether those tokens be recruits, sand soldiers, sprites, even mechs, doesn't really matter. It'll have the same effect for all of those token units. This is the new Yellow Fiora, Fiora Worthy. For 3 energy, 3 might. When the unit you control becomes mighty, meaning when it gains at least 5 might, you may pay an order rune to ready it. So let's say you have a unit at a battlefield, it's not mighty yet, you bring it back, you attach a BF sword, which makes it mighty, then you could pay an order rune to ready it, and it can immediately push into other battlefield. There's a lot you could do with this unit. You could play a unit and then make it ready immediately and then push into battlefield. Very powerful card. Renata here is for 4 energy, 1 power, you get 4 might, and she just says that your tokens enter ready. This goes for all of the token units that we talked about: recruits, sand soldiers, well, sprites already coming ready, and mechs. But this also applies for gear tokens. Most cards that give you gear, it gives you the gear exhausted. But if you have yellow Renata on the board, the gear will be available to be used immediately. Lastly, it's going to be Rek'Sai, who's pretty unique. For 5 energy, 1 power, you get 5 might, but when she attacks, you may reveal the top 2 cards of your main deck. You may play one, then recycle the rest. If the play card is a unit, you may play it here. So this is one of the main ways to trigger the effect where you like play cards from not your hand. But this also gives them similar to like the Rengar ability, where you're able to play units to battlefields you're attacking, which is a very rare effect in the current state of Riftbound. Other cards to look out for. These Facebreakers, like a stun card that Yellow has access to, which is something you have to be careful about. Shen might still throw off a lot of players because there still aren't many ways to be playing units at reaction speed. And especially if you're defending, this is a 5 might swing, so that's pretty sizable. something that you should be playing around. We also talked about Call to Glory. Remember that could be played for 0 energy, so watch out for that. You should know what Beta Hook does. I also include Divine Judgment. It's not experimentation, but was eventually like put away as like not worth it. But it might come back. It's always a card that could screw your game plan over, so I included it here. Whether or not you'll actually play against it is a different question. Vanguard Armory is a new gear that Order got. And for 7 energy, 1 power, it's a gear where you can exhaust it to play 3 recruits, 3 1 might recruit unit tokens. And so if you play this early, you're going to be able to get a lot of value out of it as long as it doesn't get killed. But it's also expensive for 7 energy. And like, yes, there's a Jace combo, but with how reliable, how many times in the game you're going to be, how often you're going to get that combo is going to be like a different question. So it's a little slow, but if you do get it off quite early, it could be really hard to play against. And I also wanted to bring your attention back to Recruit the Vanguard. For 6 energy, you just at action speed play 4 1 might recruit unit tokens to a battlefield you control. I feel like this is like this is a spell that could maybe make comebacks, but just something to be aware about. Playing units at like a spell's like at action reaction speed is always like unique and uncommon. Next, we're going to talk about Calm. Calm is known for a lot of interaction that they have, whether it be ways to increase might, their whole array of counter spells that they have access to, or also their decent number of cards that are able to stun. For hidden cards, we have the 3 from Origins, Block, Zanya's Hourglass, and Stand United. But this time we have Emperor's Divide, which I think is interesting that Calm got. It is 2 energy. At action speed, you get to move any number of friendly units out of the battlefield to their base. And so this is essentially, if I'm interpreting this correctly, just like better Flash. And so I'm surprised that they give this to green instead of like giving it to purple again. Okay, actually, I shouldn't say it's better Flash because it's at action speed and not reaction speed, which is a pretty big deal. So, but it's a side grade Flash, which is interesting that green got either way. Um, Green is known to have very limited removal options. Their only 2 options really are Charm and Blitzcrank. Charm just moves an enemy unit for 1 energy, 1 power. You can move it, you can use it to push away enemy units, or you can use it to bring them into a battlefield you control to kill units. So it's a very flexible card, but pretty expensive. The other remove they have is Blitzcrank. You get to once again pull enemy units to the battlefield that Blitzcrank is on and hopefully kill it that way. But they don't really have other ways to kill units using spells or like outside of combat. For gear removal though, they have Adaptatron from Origins, but they also got Disarming Rake, where for 3 energy, 1 power, you get 2 might, but you get to kill a gear. So very simple. If you need gear removal, you could probably use one of these 2 cards in your deck. For different ways to buff units, most of these cards are from Origins, so I won't really talk too much about them. But Feral Strength is the new one from Spiritforged. For 2 energy, at reaction speed, and it has repeat, it just gives a unit plus 2 might this turn. So it's essentially the same as Discipline, but instead of drawing a card, you're able to repeat it. And I think that's like a worse. I don't think that's like a good deal. But if you do need more ways to be able to buff your units to a larger degree, then Feral Strength is there for you. For gear, last set we have Zanya's Hourglass, but this set we got a few more options. We have Thorn Shield, which for 1 energy, it gives your unit plus 1 might and tank. So certain comps like Ornn could make really good use of this tank keyword. Guardian Angel is another equipment. It's also 2 energy. It gives a plus 1 might instead, but its effect is essentially Zanya's Hourglass for the unit that it's attached onto. So there's pros and cons. They have the same price, but Guardian Angel gives plus 1 might, but you would have to equip it unless the unit you're playing has weaponmster. But you would have to equip it. But Guardian Angel has a large upside where you know which unit you're going to be saving with Guardian Angel. It doesn't have that annoying issue with Zanya's Hourglass where your opponent could kill like a Pouty Poro or a Stalwart Poro, and you use your Zanyas to save like a Stalwart Poro, which isn't what you're really looking to do. The other two weapons are Brutalizer. It's 200 plus 1 might, but the turn you attach Brutalizer, it gives an additional plus 2. So on that turn, it'll be plus 3 might, which is very good. And Steric's Gauge, which is very expensive at 3 energy, 2 power for just the plus 3 might. But the reason why it's expensive is because it has Quick Draw, which as a reminder allows you to play this equipment and attach it at reaction speed. So it could really it could really swing some combats that are in play. Green also does not have a lot of accelerate or ready units. The only one they had previously was Tasty Feyfolk. In Spiritforged, they got Simian Ancestor, which readies itself if you buff it, which I don't think is great. Maybe Lee Sin could run it, but otherwise it's a 5 energy 1 power for 5 might. The more interesting unit is Azir Ascendant for 6 energy 1 power and 6 might. It has an ability at action speed. You have to spend a calm rune to you have to recycle a calm rune to use this action. But you get to essentially switch it with another unit you control, and Azir can also take an equipment from that other unit. Now, it doesn't exhaust Azir, so you can still move Azir afterwards if he was readied, but you can only use it once per turn. So there's a few decks that like to do funky things with Azir, especially like Ornn. But or you could just use it to kind of accelerate it himself. So you could push another unit in when you have Azir in your base, and then you could use Azir's ability at action speed to switch Azir and the other unit and kind of get him moving around. For the cards to look out for, first we have the array of counterspells that they have access to. In Origins, they already had Defy, Windwall, and Mystic Reversal, but in Spiritforged, they got a new counterspell, Not So Fast, which for 2 energy and 1 power allows you to counter an enemy spell or ability that chooses a friendly unit or gear. So this is the first way that we have to directly interact with abilities, not cards or spells. So that's interesting. And so it is an incredibly powerful card. Its one weakness is that it can't counter spells or abilities that are like targeting their own units or gear. But most cards that you are trying to counter with would be targeting like our gear, like removal spells or like fight or fly or cards like that. So it's pretty valuable. I would say it's a pretty good spell. Which counter spells you're going to be running is going to heavily depend on the meta that you're currently in and what your deck is like weak against. Janna here is another unit that could be played at reaction speed. So for 3 energy, 1 power, and 3 might, when you play her, she heals all your units there, and then she moves an enemy unit from there to its base. So it's kind of like you first get to get rid of all the damage that your units have, which could be important. It's kind of niche, but she acts as like a fight or flight to push away your enemy units. So I feel like there's like I like the flavor of Janna here because of like what she does in League, but they're kind of giving a lot of purple feeling cards to green, which is interesting to me. Spellsonger here is another interesting gear. 3 energy, 1 power. It costs an extra energy to equip, but once it's equipped, that unit's text becomes this weapon's text. So it essentially copies that unit's text and copies it and pastes it again onto the same unit. So if they have any abilities, if you have one spellsonger on it, everything will be doubled. If you have 2 spellsongers on it, it doesn't like exponentially grow. It'll just be tripled and things like that. It's not the best way to put it. Just think of it as copying the text and pasting it for every single time for every single spellsonger that is on that unit. And the last thing that you should watch out for against calm decks are going to be their access to stun cards. Rune Prison is just a 2 energy, 1 power action speed that's just a stun of units. This said, they got a new spell, Thwonk, which is 2 energy, has repeat, and then action speed you can stun an attacking unit. So once again, it's limited in what it could target, but it has the added flexibility of being repeated. So something to look out for. Next is Mind. Out of all the colors, I would say Mind has the least like whole like identity as a color because they have a lot of flexible utility and they're great at like supporting other colors. They have card draw and they have a lot of removal spells. There's also some kind of synergy where they're trying to do something with recycling cards like Mundo and like that one Origins gear. But I don't think it's quite come together yet. Although with the Spiritforged, they're also very gold centric as well because of Renata Glass. But they also have like a lot of hidden cards. The only new hidden card that Blue got is Wages of Pain. For 3 energy, and at action speed, you get to deal 3 damage to a unit at a battlefield and get to play a gold gear token Exhausted. So this is nice because before, mine didn't really have a way to deal like a medium amount of like damage because they had access to Singularity, and besides that, they just had access to a lot of like debuffing cards. So this is like a nice early game removal spell to be playing against other smaller units, and you also get a gold gear token out of it, which is nice. Speaking of removal, another card that they got, which can target anywhere, is Bellows Breath. For 1 energy, 1 power, at action speed, you deal 1 to up to 3 units at the same location, and it has repeat. So you get to deal 1 damage to up to 3 units as long as they're at the same place, or you could repeat it, and for 2 energy, 2 power, you get to either deal 1 to up to 3 units at the same location twice, or you get to choose 2 different locations and just deal 1 to up to 3 units at each location. I alluded a little bit earlier about how this card combos with Imperial Decree to essentially kill up to 6 units for 7 energy and 4 power, regardless of how big they are, which could be a huge swing in the game, although you're going to need a lot of things to go your way in order to make that work. A lot of these cards are from Origins. It's a lot of different ways to deal 6 damage to a unit. I don't know why they gave like blue all of these multiples of 3 with Wages of Pain dealing 3, Singularity Rex and Fallen Comet dealing 6, and then Unchecked Power dealing 12. Maybe there's some kind of like flavor that's hidden in there somewhere. We talked about Wages of Pain. For gear removal, they got a few other options. Pickpocket is 3 energy, 3 might. When you play her, you get to kill a gear with energy cost no more than 1. If you do, play a gold gear token Exhausted. So you get to kill gold tokens, you get to kill seals, you get to kill other small equipment. So I think this is a very valuable cyber card that you could include into your decks. The other card is Rocket Barrage. For 4 energy, 1 power. It has repeat, but you get to choose one of these. You get to deal 4 damage to a unit in a base, or you get to kill a gear. So do note that this is deal 4 damage to a unit in a base. There aren't many cards that tell you you have to target a unit at a base and not at a battlefield, but this is one of them. And if you do choose to repeat it, you get to deal 4 damage to a unit in a base and kill a gear. You don't have to choose the same option twice. So it's a bit flexible, but it does not have great like dealing 4 damage for 4 energy 1 power is not great. And also killing a gear is not great as well, but blue doesn't really have any other options, so you might be stuck with running this. For different ways to buff and debuff, the only ways to buff units like add reaction speed is Convergent Mutation, although it hasn't really been seeing much play. Blue did get a gear called World Atlas, where for 3 energy you get plus 2 might, but if the unit holds, you get to play 2 gold gear tokens Exhausted. So if you manage to pull that off, it could definitely accelerate your game plan by a lot, but getting this early could be quite difficult. The better thing that blue is known for is all their different ways to debuff units. In the past, they had Stupefy and Smokescreen, but now they got Frigid Touch, which is 2 energy. At reaction speed, you get to give a -2. You get to give a unit -2 might this turn, but it also has repeat. So once again, common occurrence here. The rate is worse than Smokescreen, where if to give a unit -4, you would have to pay 4 energy, but it's just more flexible. And theoretically, this could push a unit to 0 might if that's ever relevant, because it doesn't have this limit of a minimum of 1. For units that accelerated already, there's quite a few of them. You have your sprites that have been around and been played a lot in Origins. Pit Crew is an Origins card, but it's been seeing a lot more play in Spiritforged because, like, it's, if you don't know, it's a 3 energy, 3 might when you play a gear ready me. And gold gear are gear, even if they're tokens. So you could push them somewhere. If you have a way to generate gear, it'll ready itself and you could bring it back to base, kind of like what Lucian does in Body. Bubblebot is a mech that is 3 energy, 3 might. And when you play it, you get to ready another friendly mech. So Rumble might like using Bubblebot, or just other mech decks. Echo is also from Origins. Didn't really see that much play in Origins, despite I really tried to make him work, but he just wasn't worth it. I'm really excited for a potential Renata Glass deck that could run Echo and do some crazy combos with it. Drop Order is a card where that enters ready if you control 2 or more gear. This is a reminder that gold is gear. So if you just have 2 gold, you get a 4 energy, 4 might unit that comes in ready, which is excellent. So if that's something you could easily do, Drop Order is very good. We know Thousand Tail Watcher from Origins, very powerful card, will probably still be somewhat meta. For Gearhead, he is 5 energy with at 3 might, which is quite poor at first glance, but he comes with Accelerate, and whenever you attach equipment to him, he gets double the base might bonus. So if you have a heavy gear-focused blue deck, Gearhead could maybe see play, although even so, I think this stat line is just quite poor. Bard Mercurial, very interesting card. For 4 energy, 1 power, 4 might. As an additional cost, you can exhaust your legend, and if you did, you get to move any number of units to an open battlefield. So I think it's really niche. I think there's some future combos cooking with future sets, but I don't think Bard will be terribly relevant in the current meta. Because you're going to need ways to clear battlefields and then play him and then exhaust your legend, so I think it'll be difficult to get to work out. Breakneck Mech is supposed to be the top end for mech decks. He is, or like it is, 8 energy, 2 power for 7 might, but it gives your mechs deflect and ganging, and comes in ready if you control another mech, which should be pretty easy for mech decks to do, but it's pretty pricey. And so, but I still think it might be like a top end that they might want to run. Other blue cards to look out for. Here's Portal Rescue once again. I still don't think it got a lot of value in Spearforge. I don't think there's a lot of valuable like effects when played. But you know, it could replay certain units at action speed, which could throw people off guard. Renata could be really threatening because she allows you to score an extra point if she's at a battlefield by paying 4 energy, 4 power, and exhausting her. So she has to be readied, which is one of the harder things to get her to work with. But especially with in combination of Time Warp, there could be some really deadly combos where your opponent could be at 4 points and just win the game right there on like 1 or like 2, including Time Warp turns. So just be on the lookout for that. Finally, our final color, Chaos, aka Purple. They have tons of soft removal, and what they mean by soft removal is just a way to get units off of battlefields, whether it be to push them back to base or to push them back into your opponent's hands. They have a lot of ways to move units around, maybe ready them, things like that. And they also got a large number of card selection, whether it be discarding and drawing, or just looking at a few cards, taking one of them and putting the rest back into your deck. Hidden cards, we had 3 in the last set, but they got 3 more. One is Windsinger, which for 2 energy, 1 might, it's essentially just Gust on a 1 might unit that can be hidden. So just extra ways for them to be able to remove small might units. Nothing too special about it, could be played. Edge of Night is a hidden equipment, which is unique. It's 3 energy, gives 2 might, and when you reveal it from face down, you get to attach it to a unit you control there. So it'll give +2 might, and it'll stay on the board even if that unit dies, like all other equipment. The most influential hidden card, in my opinion, that Chaos got this set is Switcheroo. For 2 energy, 2 power, you get to swap the might of 2 units at the same battlefield this turn at action speed. So even if, like, let's say I'm playing Chaos, I'm pushing in a 1 might unit against like a 7 might unit, I can cast Switcheroo, and my 1 might unit would become 7, and their 7 might unit would become 1, allowing me to win, allowing me to get this massive might swing. So this can heavily punish you if you're not being careful, and you're not safe to just defend against purple with a large unit, whether it be because of switcheroo or whether it gets rebuked or fight or flight or for a plethora of other reasons. Speaking of other removal, there's Windsinger, which is the new gust on a stick that I talked about last slide. There's Fight or Flight, which pushes units away. We all know what it does, and or you could use it to save your own units. And there's also Rebuke, which with the gold generation is extra strong this set. The other card is Fading Memories, which is also an Origins card. This is like the most hard removal that purple really gets because it gives a unit out of battlefield or a gear temporary, which does actually kill it, unlike most of these other removal spells. Other removal spells that we got are Acceptable Losses, which is just one from Origin, which is kind of like Call the Weak but for gear. And there's also Factory Recall, where you get to return a gear to its owner's hand for 1 energy and an action speed. I don't think it's really worth it because most gear isn't like that. Well, actually, I don't know. It could be good. But I think purple just has so much other good cards that they would rather be running than this. I think that's the main issue. Temptation is kind of like charm, I would say. It's like limited charm. For 2 energy, it has repeat. You get to move an enemy unit to a location where there's a unit with the same controller. So you could use that to push units out of battlefield back into base as long as there's another unit there. Or you get to pull units from the other battlefield or at base to another battlefield and hopefully kill the units there or just to empty up other battlefields. It's interesting, but once again, purple just has a lot of other better cards to be running. Possession is a classic, like, steal a unit card from Origins. There not a lot of decks are running it, but it could be run. And probably the most interesting quote-unquote removal card that purple got in this set is Downwell, where for 8 energy and 2 power, you get to reset the entire board. All units and gear is going to return to their owner's hands. So this does bring the rise of certain prison decks, which allows your opponent from playing the game essentially, unless they have like 2 accelerating or readying units, because you could just put this in an infinite cycle with like Purple Annie to just repeat it over and over again. So that's just something to watch out for. For buffing and debuffing, we talked about these first 2 spells. The other 2 is A, Boots of Swiftness. For 3 energy, you get +2 might, but you also get ganking, which purple can utilize quite well. And the last equipment is also 3 energy +2 might, but when the unit conquers or holds, you can play a unit from your trash. This is mostly seen, like personally, in the Miracle Draven list, and it could be really oppressive because your opponent could just be playing Razas constantly for free, over and over again. Oh, and also that's the additional cost to recycle 2 cards from your trash. So you do need like a sizable trash to be able to equipping this over and over again. Different ways to accelerate ready. We have Sneaky Deckhand, which is able to contest open battlefields immediately. There's also like the Purple Misfortune that has the same effect. There is Sivir Mercenary, which is for 4 energy, 1 power, 4 might. She has Accelerate, and if you spent at least 2 power this turn, she has +2 in ganking. I don't really have much to say about her. I haven't seen Sivir be played too much yet, but it just seems like an okay card to be running in that kind of deck. the other cards that are interesting, or like the other cards to note here, are just all the movement spells that purple have. Like Flash doesn't really like accelerate already, but it just, or I mean, it can move a friendly unit to base, and then that unit can move to the other battlefield. So I just, it kind of does that. But you've seen all these cards. There are different ways that they have to move things around the board. Here are the four other like movement cards that purple has access to. You can move a unit from one battlefield back to base, and then push it to the other one, or you can just ride the wind units immediately. You know what these cards do. And the other cards to be looking out for some reason, Riot gave Chaos a counterspell of Hard Bargain. So for 2 energy at reaction speed, it has repeat, and it just counters the spell unless its controller pays 2 extra energy. So it could be a 2 energy, make your opponent's spell more expensive by 2 energy, or a 4 energy, make your opponent's spell more expensive by 4 energy. And so you just have to always have the energy open to pay this extra cost if you really need that spell to go off. So pretty annoying. There's Ride the Wind and Invert Timelines from set 1. Also Annie and Mistsplitter. You know what those cards do. I won't talk too much about them. Fizz is 3 energy for 1 power. I believe he's 3 might. And when you play him, you can play a spell from your trash with energy cost no more than 3, ignoring its energy cost. But after you play it, using Fizz's ability, you're gonna have to recycle it. So you can't play the same spell over and over again. But this allows your Fizz to recur spells, like cheap spells, over and over again, well, 1 extra time. And the problem is that purple has excellent cheap spells. Like most of their great spells are like 2 energy. And even if you don't have them, you could replay Called Shot or Stacked Deck to play them over and over again. Ezreal is 3 energy, 1 power for 3 mites. And his first ability is that when you play him, you discard 1 and draw 2. So this is already great. You're getting not only draw, but like hand selection draw. So you draw a net of 1 plus a little bit of hand selection, hand fixing. But he has the additional ability that optional additional cost you may pay costs 1 energy or 1 power less. So a Hard Bargain, you could play repeated for 3. A Called Shot, you could play it for just 1 power. So Ezreal has this it could feel very oppressive at sometimes, where your opponents are just able to do a lot more for a lot less with repeated spells. The last card I want to bring to attention here is Draven. For 6 energy, 1 power, 6 might, he has Deflect. But the first time that he wins a combat each turn, you score like his controller scores a point. But if he dies in combat, then the opponent would score a point instead. So a very high risk, high reward card, but if you're not ready for it, it could really put a wrench in your plans. So something to look out for. Especially like if they decide to play Draven and Ride the Wind into like a weak battlefield and you're tapped down, it could be disastrous. So those are the 6 colors of Riftbound. Are we done thinking about what possible cards your opponent might be playing? No, because don't forget about the signature cards. In set 2, in Spiritforged, the power of signature cards are clearly, and by quite a large margin, more powerful than they have been in Origins. In Origins, only a few legends had signature cards that are actually worth playing. But in Spiritforged, I think most legends do want to actually play their signature cards in their lists. Like some might be 1 of, some might be 2 of, some might be even a 3 of, but all of them are quite good. I'm not gonna go through most of them. I'm just not gonna go through them in this video, since when you're playing against an opponent, there's only 1 card you actually have to be including for that, as long as you know what it is. So you should go read up on all of them and know what they are. But just don't forget that that is something that your opponent might bring out. So that is it for today's video. It was kind of a lot of information. Don't remember that I will be linking this spreadsheet in the description. And I encourage you to go in there, make a copy of it, and just in your own list, just take out all the cards that you think aren't really relevant. I included almost everything that was relevant within my criteria that I listed up here. But most of these spells will not. Most of these cards will not be played in Spiritforged meta, so you should just take them out so that you don't have to look at a million cards every single time you're trying to like study up on what you might be seeing. Like, get excited. I don't know. Might be played, might be not. A Blastcore Cadet. I don't know if we'll see play. So you can just take out the cards that you don't think is worth noting. For future videos, I have a few ideas. I'll probably be uploading like roughly once a week, maybe. And so just be on the lookout for that. And let me know if there's anything that you want to see. See you guys next time.